Welcome to the Jetpack tutorial. If you'd like to learn more about this kit and how it was made, be sure to check the website, Instagram, and Facebook pages linked in the description. I'm also linking a video examining each of these kit parts individually. In this tutorial, I'm showing you all the steps involved in transforming this set of do-it-yourself castings into a museum-ready and convention-ready jetpack. If you're here for specific steps in this build-up process, this tutorial is segmented into distinct areas. At the beginning of this video, I'll be showing you how the parts are trimmed, cleaned, and prepared. At 3 minutes, I begin the body masking stage. At 10 minutes, I demonstrate airbrush weathering and spattering techniques. At the 17-minute mark, you see how the rocket is painted and assembled. 22 minutes marks the beginning of weathering and distressing the jetpack body. Finally, at 26 minutes, you see the assembly of the rocket, beacons, and thruster assemblies. Let's get started. So let's go ahead and start with the body. This casting is already very clean. There's very little we need to do with this. I'm using regular body filler just to cover up some of these seams. You just want to go over the edge just a little bit like this. Alright, I have spent some time doing a little bit of cleanup on those seam lines, gave everything a nice sand down, and I want to primer this with a white primer. There's a lot of bright colors that go onto this jetpack, and it makes it easier if you start with a white or even an off-white base. We have a nice bright base coat. Let's go ahead and matte clear this. Give it a good seal coat, because we'll be doing a lot of masking. Almost every square inch of this is going to be masked for color. What I've decided to do is mask this jetpack off for doing the blue color first. So I'm isolating the blue color and masking off these areas that will be white. And I'm not really doing it super tight in this area because the yellow is going to be going on top of whatever is white left over. So this tank is yellow. So I'm over masking this because in the end it won't make a difference how well this mask is or how tight it is to the actual color, because it will all be masked again at another stage for yellow. And now we start with blue. This is Rust-Oleum Satin Wildflower Blue. And I know that this whole butt of the front is yellow. This tube is yellow. Not worried about overspray. All I'm doing is getting the base coat of blue wherever I know it's going to be blue. Then we're going to mask that and do yellow next. Now I'm masking for yellow, so I covered these tanks, I covered the spine, I'm keeping the white areas covered, but I remasked for this yellow portion of the rocket thruster housing. This tank is covered, this is all covered except for the tube for the rocket base. For the yellow, I'm using Ace Rust Stop Caterpillar Yellow. Caterpillar Yellow is pretty tough to find at a store like Home Depot. They just don't carry this specific color. It's sort of like a mustardy yellow. It's perfect. So just a few light coats and we'll be ready to move on to the final masking stage. I've gone ahead and masked for the red, so it's this central spine and around that perimeter. I'm using Tamiya Dull Red barcode for you guys. This seems to be the perfect color. Here's your tank caps. I'm painting this Tamiya dull red. Here is the rocket foundation, also dull red. When trimming the thruster assemblies, go ahead and trim the ball down to where there's barely a lip left, and then the cone to where there's no lip left. And then these guys will match up very cleanly. These are the two little knobs for the thruster assembly. They're bright silver. My favorite rattle can silver is Rust-Oleum Chrome. Barcode. It dries fast, and it really is bright. Tamiya Insignia White for these two lower parts of the rocket. I'm base coating the upper sections of this rocket in silver, a duller silver than the Rust-Oleum I use normally. This is duplicolor chrome. It's not as shiny. That's what we want. We want more of an aluminum look to these parts. And now we'll attach the body connector and use Bondo to blend that into this piece here. These two assemblies are ready for their base coat of Tamiya Insignia White. Okay, this jetpack is unmasked. All the main colors are applied. It's looking really shiny, so I'm going to hit this down with a matte sealer, dull it down a little bit, and then I'll start attaching parts. Thruster, nozzle detail, the two bottom tank caps, and the two top tank caps. All of the rocket components are base coated. Now let's put together the bottom and upper parts of this rocket. To have a better look at how these parts go together really closely, have a look at the video linked in the description for the kit demonstration. We are going to start with the base. These two parts go together. That's your bottom. This is also really easy and strong to put together because it's pre-pinned. That's cast into the part. So once that locks in there with some super glue and CA, very strong. The next part that goes on top of that is this cone. The top section is this, and this collar sits on top and it lines up with the fins. These indented parts here line up with these fins, so that's really easy to put on. There's only one way that goes on right. And then the cone right on top of that. And there's your main parts to the rocket. This is a little trick I was doing off camera. Then I decided maybe I should include this in the tutorial. It's a nice little trick for getting stripes, little pinstripes. This piece in particular has a black stripe that goes across this. You could mask it, airbrush it black. That's just fine. A faster way is to use electrical tape, and you lay down a piece of electrical tape on a piece of plastic, any kind of flat surface that you can cut on. Use a straight edge, a blade, trim the proportion you need, and then lay it on. The electrical tape striping works great over here too. You're just going to use a little bit of a sculpting tool to press it down into the contours, and then grab a blade and trim. I'm applying these beveled bricks one at a time using these tweezers, a little bit of super glue, and individually placing them on the spine. I'm going to go ahead and start airbrushing now. Let me review the colors I'll be using to do the weathering on this jetpack. I have flat black, flat white. These are all Tamiya colors, by the way. I've got a dark brown, a light brown, a yellow, orange, red. I have a copper color, and silver. That's going to be one of our most important colors, is this silver. I have mixing cups, stir sticks, and my thinner is 70% isopropyl alcohol. My airbrush equipment is an Iwata double action. You can also use a single action, just a really simple Pache single action brush works just as well, and a tiny little compressor. I also have a set of calligraphy pens. I've got regular silver, I have a fine tip silver, black and white. This is the beacon that goes on top of the jetpack. I masked off this little center waistline, and that is flat black. I made a very thin mix of a medium gray. I'm going to start breaking up these colors, just lightly applying this. I want to bring the detail out of these black strips, so just mist it with a little bit of this light gray. That'll raise up that detail. And then I'm going to come in here and just, especially around the base of this, and I'm looking at some reference shots, and I'm just going to tone this a little bit, just start to break up these colors. This is a very light, medium gray. Now I have a very transparent, sort of brown, rusty color, and I'm going to take it easy with this. I might back that off just a little bit. Very lightly, here and there, according to the reference shots, just give it a little bit of this kind of brown, rich shading. Don't overdo it, just sort of, just get a little bit of that flavor in there. Now I'm going to introduce some staining. I'm using a slightly darker gray with a lot of ISO mixed in, so it's very subtle. And I'm going to come in and start getting some of these gray variant colors in here. See, there's a lot on this side over here. There's a lot of spatter. We'll do that next. But I'm just looking at these reference shots and kind of breaking this up with a little bit of gray. Again, you want to mix that paint very thin, and you just barely want to get it on here. Now I'm going into spattering. I see that there's a lot of spatter on these parts, so I've got a very thin down darker gray. I've got a chip brush that's been trimmed down. Bristles are pretty short. And I'm going to flick this on the box to see what I've got. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead from a distance and spatter this color so we get even more breakup and we get these really interesting spots. Yeah, like that. And you probably want to come back behind this and do brown, or that kind of rust color I mixed earlier. And again, don't go too crazy. I like to go a little bit minimal at first, and then come back in. But you can see I've got some really interesting spatter happening here. Now I'm going to go back to this rust. I feel like a lot of that rust got covered up, so I'm going to come in and reintroduce very subtly. Bring it back. Got some very interesting variations happening here. Let's introduce a little bit of scratching. This guy has some scratches here, and we're basically rubbing off the paint and revealing the base coat that's in there. If the paint won't scratch away to reveal white, then just switch to paint. You can also use acrylic or Tamiya white paint on a toothpick. So I'm going to bring some of this black away with this white pen. And that'll give you a little bit of that paint flaking. I'm keeping all these colors, so I've got a little library already accumulated for this project. These will all be used on the Jetpack. We have a brown rust color, we have spatter gray, thin gray, medium gray, thin black, and heavy black. So it really helps to label these cups, and I'll just grab them as I go. For this section of the rocket, we're going to tone it down with some medium gray. Then we're going to come from the top and get darker down. There's a very slight amount of that warm brown tone. Again, go really subtle. You can always come in and make it richer later. Now I'm heading in with a thin down black, not a heavy opaque black. This is very translucent black. I'm going to start shading from the top down. I just want to get some feathering action before I go in with heavy duty black. I want you to see that I'm holding this airbrush down at a high angle like this to get that feathering effect towards the bottom edge. Then I'm going real heavy up on top. It's just black up here. I lost some of my rust tone coloring here at the bottom, so I'm going to come in and reintroduce a little bit of that rust flavor. And this will all really start making sense once all the silver weathering starts coming on and this gets all scratched up. I'm going to come in with a little bit of spatter. It's very light. And don't worry, you're going to come in and you're going to cover this black, but you will be going back over that. But I just want to get a little bit of color breakup down here at the bottom. I'm going to do this with a very light gray, and I'll do it with a darker gray. Alright, to scar up this rocket, we have all this really wonderful contrast, so really all it takes is a sharp tool and just start scratching the heck out of it. There you go. You get the idea for that, like that. There's also this white lip that's around the bottom of this edge. So I'm using my white pen here. Alright, let's handle the top of the rocket. I'm going to be using a liquid mask to preserve some of this silver. And then we're going to be using an airbrush to do some translucent bronze. So looking at some reference shots, there's a lot of exposed silver on these edges. This is the side of the rocket. There's a little bit up here. This end of it has a lot over here. You can use latex for this. They do make specific rubber masking material. Today I'm just using some silicone rubber because I have a lot of it on hand. And I'm just going to go around. I'm holding it by its core. My masking is dried on this top rocket. I have a mix of about 3 parts copper to 1 part red. Thinned it down with some ISO. And I've got a really nice reddish coppery color. So we're going to start really heavy on the bottom. And then give coverage all over where the masking is. And as we get to the top, it's very light. Just around the base of this, I'm going to go a little bit darker with some very thin down black. Just down here. Maybe just a little bit up that side fin here. Here is your unmasked rocket top. Got a little bit of silver on the end of this brush, and I'm just going to nick at these fins just a little bit, just to chip it up. There it is, guys. Finished rocket. I'm going to start the weathering on this Jetpack body pretty aggressively. I have a very dark gray. It's almost black, but not quite. So I'm going to open up my compressor. I'm going to get this regulator opened up all the way. I've got this dark gray in here, and I'm just going to go ahead and give everything a nice light mist. And wherever I see it's much darker, like right in here, just going to go a little more aggressively. Over here. I'm not going to go into super amazing detail with these water slide decals. I have an entire tutorial dedicated to just this, which I'll link in the description. But this is the updated set of decals. Now, because the base of this casting is white, you're able to scrape away the paint and reveal that material underneath. So this not only is easy, it looks great and it feels great, because when you touch it, it just feels like battle damaged parts. So this ring here has a whole lot of damage on it. I have got a very strong black, straight black, there's no gray in it. And I'm just going to give a little more drama to these areas. The more contrast you create here, the more those scratches will shine through. And now we begin the process of battle damaging with white and silver. There's a lot of white on these edges. I'm going to start laying on some of this Tamiya silver with a brush. And almost this entire thing is covered down here. This silver calligraphy pen comes in really handy when it comes to making tiny little scrapes and dots. So I could just make all this blend in by putting some scratches. Just randomly model up that surface. Big difference. To attach the stabilizer and the beacon, I'll insert copper pins. I'll put corresponding holes on these guys and they'll insert right into place. To attach the thruster assemblies, I'll be using a piece of 1/4 inch all thread, and I'll trim it so that just it's barely coming out of these ends. And then to make these attach, I'll be using a coupling, 1/4 inch coupling, and I'll drill into this tab and insert it here. 1/4 inch coupling nuts on the 1/4 inch all thread. I've got it attached into the coupler on this side. I fed the all thread through to the other side and it connects to the coupler on that thruster and works pretty well. I've got really good tension. Very happy with how that worked out. It would be much easier if you were to have access to the interior. I didn't do that for this build, but it really would make a lot of sense to cut out an access panel here so you can access the interior. Would make attaching those a heck of a lot easier. But that worked out very well. I'm very pleased. Look at that. I'm finishing this jetpack with a little bit of dark brown spatter. Really hard to see. You really don't expect it, but when you closely examine high quality photos, you see spatter. They do this on a bunch of the studio scale models. It's all over the Falcon and all over the ship. So this is something ILM liked to do in the old days. So just give it a little bit of spatter texture. Doesn't really read unless you get super up close, but boy oh boy, there is spatter in this model. If you're going to be traveling with a jetpack like this, you definitely want to make it detachable. If it's a wall display, just epoxy this guy right in place. Well, here it is, guys. Fully assembled. Everything's attached. Really went crazy with the detail. One of the things I didn't film is putting these little rivet heads. There's these two little nuts that are on this little part here on one of the Hero jetpacks. So these are just rivet heads I trimmed down, stuck in there. And there she is. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Be sure to check the links in the description to visit the website and learn more about this process. Thanks for watching.